We welcome you, we want to thank you, and I'm going to turn it over here. I've got my clicker here somewhere. You bring it up?
Alright, so a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So I know we've been talking a lot about targets and scales, but we really wanted to go into this time how you can monitor the target and scale during your lessons and how you can have the students reflect on themselves as well. But before we get into that, we'll introduce ourselves a little bit because there's a little bit of new faces in here. So my name is Ashley Beacon. I'm going to be teaching first grade this year.
And I'm Sylvia Kinsella, and I teach fourth grade. And we're going to throw Mr. Smiley around.
Sunshine.
Mr. Sunshine. Mr. Smiley says, if he comes your way, introduce yourself and say one thing about
You
you.
get to pick who you're throwing it to now.
Oh.
I think that was aimed at the gentleman behind the curtain. Okay. Good catch.
Who are you?
I'm Scott Hogan. Yes, I'm here at the Hill School. Actually, it's funny. I don't think I have my name, so there's one person that doesn't know me. Scott Hogan, I'm principal at the Hill School now. It's nice to meet you. And Dana's here too.
Hi.
Okay. There we go.
All right, this is our scale for today as we continue to grow. And what we'd like you to do is look at it and kind of think about where you stand as far as using targets in your daily classroom. And then you can see where 2 is, you can see what the 3 is. The 3 is the learning goal, and then you can see what a level 4 is. And what we'd like you to do is take a sticky note and put it up on this board next to where you think you stand as a grade.
Actually, can I offer that real quick? So we were talking this morning, so we altered it a little bit just to make it more fun. So you've got chart paper there at your table. So I put a model up here this morning for you to make a 4-3-2 column at your table. Create a fun group name. This is just a model, so I call it model. You can pick something fun, and if you want to do an animal name, we love animal names. If you want to do something else crazy as a sports team, do that. But if you think, so each person create one for your table, and then each person writes their own individual target. And if you think it's a level 4 target, put it on a pink sticky. If you think it's a 3 target, put on a 3 sticky, based on where you are. If you feel that your goal for today, your target for today, I should say, is at the 4, and I'm already at the 3, I need assistance at that 4, and that's where I'm at, then do a pink sticky and stick it on the 4 on your chart. If you think you're 3, if you think you're 2, and at least give yourself a 2. Even if you think you're a 1, even with help I'm struggling, still give yourself a 2. Sound fair? That's it, quick, simple, and then you can stick your chart over here. Someone in your group put your chart up. Alright, well our last group is finalizing their name. I think we're ready to go. Do we want to do a quick turn and talk to just, how do we feel at our tables? Are we good with, did we talk about what targets were ready, or did we pretty much just write them and stick them? Okay, you guys talked about them. We got them hung up, we've got our last table there, and I said it's interesting, we have 2 different groups, Ashley and Sylvia, that chose Summer's Not Over and Slow Down Summer as their name. But then we have Team Tip the Scale, and it's interesting because we had a set of directions. And the set of directions were take these different sticky notes and stick them in the corresponding level of the scale that you think it aligns to. Now what Team Tip the Scale did, which is interesting, they wrote their target at the level they thought on the sticky, and then they stuck it where they feel they are now in hopes to get there. So what I looked at them and said is they differentiated the activity based on their need. They want to be able to see how they progress over the course of the day. Even if they didn't, that's what we're going with. So that's interesting. The rest of you, thank you very much. But just really quick, does anyone care to share at Slow Down Summer what your target was? Just because as the ladies were walking around, we were talking about there are a lot of similarities in your targets today. in hopes of what we want to get out of this. Does anyone want to slow down someone, want to share their target? Which one want to slow down someone? Not you guys. Anybody? Willie pick them? I'll read them. I've got utilize the scale for individual students growth, integrate the scale for monitoring. That was NC. Lindsay, you wrote down monitoring student progress and applying data to instruction and self-reflection. So monitoring students, utilizing for student growth, identifying how to monitor student progress towards mastery. Monitoring, learn how to better integrate student reflection. So just within one group, we're hearing student reflection, monitoring.
Yeah, and as I walked around too, every group, at least somebody put the monitoring and the reflection, so we're hoping to really hit on that.
Is there any other target that you had that you feel, so those are two biggies, any other ones? Sandy? Everyone? Oh, okay. Well, those are two things that we're going to be eyeballing, and we'll continue to peruse this and for you to take a chance to self-reflect on your individual target and how we're progressing on this over the course of the day. Take it away.
So we came up with an activity.
High energy worker is.
And this is a little different. It doesn't have a scale. It's just a fun activity, and you can teach the kids this way. You can teach the kids how to read a target, use a target, and then there's a little bit of monitoring in this activity. Too. So the target for this activity would be I can use my engineering skills to build a Lego maze on the Lego board. And this is what my students do in my classroom. They all have a binder. I write the target, and I have a target just like that on the board, and they write it on their sheet. I can. It's an I can statement. So your I can statement, you would copy down. They copy it down in their targets and scales binder, and then they know that is their target for the lesson. That's the overall target. That's the overall target that everyone gets. And then it kind of, just like we differentiate a little bit in our when we put the posters up, the same thing happens in the classroom. As they do the activity, they write down what they learned. Some people end up writing 3 or 4 things. Some people, I tell them to reflect right back onto that first target. What engineering skills do you use? And you write an I learned statement after. So what you guys are going to do is you have your target. I can use my engineering skills to build a Lego maze on the Lego board. You're going to copy your target on the chart, and then you have marbles that go through the maze. You have Lego pieces. You have 2 boards. You can do it as a group. You can do this 4. It doesn't matter. And what you do is you put the Lego pieces on here, and you make a maze, and you move the board around so that the marble goes through the maze. And this is exactly how, I don't show them anything, this is exactly how I introduce it to my kids. So you can go ahead and get started. It's very open-ended. If you need more Lego pieces, they're all over here. Some tables have them scattered. But all you do is you use the pieces and you make a maze, and then the Lego marble goes through it. You have 4 or 5 marbles. But first, I can ask you, what's the first thing that you have to do before you get started? And this is like a rule in my classroom. What do you have to do on your chart paper? You have to write down your target, just like they have to write it down in their binder.
There should be a second piece of chart paper on your table.
Oh, you want both?
And you start to chart it there. See if the marble will fit that way. It's like a frost worker. Oh, what? Frost. Oh. It's all important. Should we go this way then, or is it?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, no, I like that.
I was just saying you're gonna
Yeah.
There's a reason you teach math.
Not gonna stop right there.
Next to this.
Right. Yeah.
See how.
What you can do now, it looks like many people are done. What you can do on your sheet underneath your I can statement, write an I learned statement. Anything that you learned from this activity.
I learned statement, anything else?
Yeah, right underneath, right underneath it. I learned, and anything all that you learned. It could be more than one, you can each write one, you can write a big one.
Work together.
I don't think he'll fit under the bridge.
That's what I'm.
All right, then, if you look at your different I learned statements, of course, you probably would have done, the kids will already know the scale. This is a grade 4 engineering and design scale for science. And you can see, like for level 3, one of them is define a simple design problem, reflecting a need or a want that includes specific criteria for success constraints. So define a simple design problem. Maybe when you wrote how you adjusted your maze, that was a design problem. And maybe you learned how to fix the problem. Another one, generate and compare multiple possible solutions. I'm sure you didn't just put the maze down. I'm sure you had to pick up a piece, move it. You tried it, it didn't work. Maybe you learned how to find different possible solutions to an engineering design. And you can keep it. I never go, hardly ever do I go into the details of the scale. I keep it this simple. The verbs generate and compare multiple possible solutions, and most, at least 4th graders, know what, I'll teach them what generate means. They know what possible solutions are. Then you don't have to worry about the little details, or they'll know what researching is. You can go as deep as you want into the standard on the scale. And you definitely plan to carry out fair tests in which variables are controlled. You planned and you did different, you picked up different Legos and moved them around. So your I learned statement would most likely somehow come up on the scale.
Maybe zoom out and then move down.
Oh, okay. They're trying to look it up.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you were. Then I would have the kids rate. Look at your I learned statement. Where do you think you were? What did you come up with something that was close to one of the 3s, or were you at a level 2? Sometimes that's also, you know how 4 you pretty much know what you're doing and you did this with the ease and whatnot. They would write a 4, but they're not a 4 because you have to go back. Are you able to do all these things in multiple times, and can you explain it? Can you go and teach this to a class? Not teach to a class, but can you really explain it in detail? And I always find something if they say they're a 4, because hardly ever anyone, I have the advanced math list, hardly any of them are ever 4s. Or you could have a level 2, you just carried out the teacher provided test, you pretty much just made a maze. Did you just make a maze and you have no idea what you're talking about, and you rate yourself a level 2. And you'll see all the I learned statements are broad. And if you analyze and look at it, the kids have the binder, you can figure out where a child stands on the scale. And if you know if someone wrote something that was way out there, you know that he needs more help on that and he has no idea what's going on. And then the next lesson, well, in science at least, this scale always comes up because they're always doing different activities and they're always designing. So the first time it's going to be really hard, and then it gets easier, and then eventually they understand the scale and how to write it down. And that's how I monitor in math. I have the binder and they have the, I can share it out later. They have their sheets, they write, and every day they do when they write down, I can, and I learn, and then they rate themselves where they were that day. And sometimes they have sticky notes because they want to write more, sometimes they have very little. And then they come up, when I check their workbook page, they'll show me this as well. They know they have to show it to me. And sometimes I put a star and I have tickets. Oh, great, you did well. Even if it was a 2 and I know that they tried their best, you earned your ticket for the day. 4s, sometimes I'll stop in the middle of class and be like, oh my gosh, look at what Joey wrote in his binder today. And then everyone will chime in and listen, and then they're competitive with one another, and they're going to want to try that the next time, or at least a lot of them are. And a lot of them is teamwork. This activity wasn't alone. And also, but then the binder, if they need, this is more of an individual thing. I'm telling them not, don't look at your neighbor and see what they wrote. That has nothing to do with you. Unless the overall goal was teamwork, then they could talk about it. So this is just one way that I monitor an entity, and I sometimes keep these, sometimes they just take them home. But this way you can see exactly what they did every day, and exactly where they were. And this is evidence of the work. Like in math, I can subtract multi-digit whole numbers. They made me 4 different problems where they subtracted multi-digit whole numbers. And then she wrote she was a level 3. She wanted to be a level 4, and she wrote a multi-step word problem. And she was a level 4. And it's the same thing for science. When I taught reading, I used this for reading too. And it's the same thing, and it can reflect back to the original scale.
I have a question. Can you speak a little to how you would use either this specific activity or the binder as a whole in regards to grade reporting? It's really your evidence of your
Oh, the grade?
So, yeah.
So they have you have to go back, you would have the evidence, like, most of the page, like this page, I know the first unit is mostly MBT, I don't know, remember the exact numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you know the standards and the numbers, you can reflect and see, all right, this person had, say these 2 were MBT2, these 2 had 2s, and you could, if you really wanted to, I don't, or haven't yet, put that in your grade book. On that day, on 9/11, they were a 2 on that standard. And then 9/12, it was a different standard and they were on a 2. You could record that in your grade book as a daily standards grade if you wanted to.
I could chime in on it. So that's what I tried last year, reporting all the daily things, because for kindergarten, well, I was in kindergarten last year and they can't write binders or read binders. So what I did was after a lesson or what they were doing or an activity, Diane and I would monitor whether it was something on a piece of paper or something that they did or a conversation we had, and daily we would keep track of that 1, 2, 3, 4 where they stood on the target. So we would have the target in the grade book like this, or the activity name that we did, and then we have the activity underneath the standard. And then for that day, we would just kind of quickly gauge what they did or whatever, look at it real fast and be like, okay, and we wrote down all the numbers. And I kept that all on course, and it was really helpful when it came to report card time, because I would just say, okay, I'm doing the standard on syllables. I would just look, and there's all the numbers in a row. There's 20 different activities, and you can see 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So you know where they were by the end of that trimester without really even having to look back at papers or files or anything like that. It was probably the fastest I've ever was able to do report cards this year, because I had all of that in the grade book already. And then I go to the next year, like math, all of our addition activities, all those quick formative assessments, I had scores for them. And again, it's cool because you can see that whole growth and what the purpose of the scales are by looking at the numbers, or whether they're fluctuating or whether they started at 1 and now they're all 3s. But I thought that was very helpful. So she kept it in a binder, I kept it on course, and then the papers or things that they did went home so parents could see how they're doing, and that's also their way of keeping that progress, but I didn't want to hold on to all of those little things.
And it helps with the kids that really have no clue what they're doing, because their I learned statement will be nothing that you did that day. Oh, okay. And then I'll keep a sheet of paper and I'll jot down their name. I know they need more help with that.
If you found sometimes they just wrote their I-learned statement and had nothing to do with what they were doing that day, let's say they were giving themselves and a 3 in there, would you make them change, or what would you do?
I tell them that's not a 3.
And then
I said, I'm sorry, look back at your scale, and in the back of the binder we do have the scales. And do you see that anywhere on there? No, I'm sorry, that's not a 3. Where do you really, I am cool with them, but
I like that. I'm sorry.
where do you really think you are? And then I'll tell them it's all right if you need some help. You don't get it on the first try. And then I jot down my note, and next time I do small group or during daily 3 math, I'll pull back. I know exactly who pulled to the table with me, because they had no clue what And it does happen sometimes, I'm like, and sometimes I don't say anything to them because I don't, the first time, I'll wait and see what they do the next time. And if it, but then definitely if it continues, and sometimes there's play games too. Like, all right, here, take that, you don't have your ticket. And then I do this, and I will do it, this year, last year I did something a little different, and I didn't go into all details of this, but on the first week of school, we have the parents in, and the parents are gonna do this activity with their kids. And that way the parents know exactly what's going on to a certain level. And I'll keep it very brief. And I'm assuming that the kids coming in, now they've been using targets and scales, so they know what 1, 2, 3, or 4 is. So I'm gonna do an activity like this, and we just see how it goes. But and the parents are gonna build these, they'll do it in team tables, just like you guys. Or even on, I don't know, back to school night or something like that. That way the parents have a little bit more of an idea of what's going on. And they don't ask me so many questions. And then I'll remind the kids, remember that maze activity, but tell your parents about, remind them about the maze activity. But that's a lot. And later on we have a couple videos and I have some kids explaining the binder. But we thought that was kind of a fun activity, just to get things started.
So just a little review, so everybody is at a different stage of this journey with targets and scales. And I know a lot of it, we keep coming to these PDs and trying to learn something more, but there are no concrete answers. When we were talking about it, it looks like, and we want to be perfectionists, that we're looking for a concrete answer. But as the three of us were talking, we realized there are no concrete answers. We have to learn to be okay with that and okay with adjusting and all of that. So we wanted you to just turn and talk real quick, just sharing about, again, reviewing where we feel that we are in terms of understanding targets and scales.
Yeah, following our introduction activity, you wrote your target, we've had an introduction to the concept, we've reflected on our learning based on a concept and a scale. So thinking about your own professional practice, whether you're an ICR teacher, teaching ABA, you're a 6th grade math teacher, whatever it happens to be, just try to talk to me about what you feel have been your strengths and your struggles so far. Maybe one strength and one like an average, like an area you feel like I need to grow in this area. Just at your table. Just a quick 2 minutes. Go back. We got a lot of questions coming up.
All right, is there anyone that would like to share a strength or something that they still are a little shaky on with the group? There's a lot of great conversations happening.
Some of us were a little bit shaky still on how often do you do the reflection piece? Because for ELA, we have so many standards, so many skills that we do every day. Would you stop like every single day for every single scale, for like how often are you doing that? And do you do it in small group or individual?
I was just telling Eileen and Robin, like when I taught ELA, we have the main lesson target up there. That's the main target for everyone. And most likely they won't reflect on that, but if you take a small group to your table, they don't take the binder with them. The binder is just for the mini lesson. And then, and when they go around to their daily 5 stations, they have the binder handy. The target is at the daily 5 station, but they don't always reflect on it there. I see that more in the work that they handed to me that I look at, and I'll know what standard that is, and that's more of a reference for me.
But then I think again, like there is no right or wrong for how often you do it. So again, I feel like that's where we're in the same boat again. Like I know like how I was explaining how I keep all my like grades on course, those quick formative assessments. Like I don't, for the little guys, there's not enough time in the day for after every lesson to listen to every little kid reflect on what they just did. That's not possible. So there's, maybe a couple times a week, or this week I got it one, like depending on just, kind of how things are going and how much evidence you have, it's kind of, it's going to be different. Like you can get more something daily versus some of the younger kids, you're not going to get that.
Can I bring something up that came up over here? Because is to the point of, like you guys were saying, it may, like you guys have a little, even a bit of a different tack that you take at targets and scales or whatever one of these strategies. But what we talked about over here is, we said there's flexibility in terms of like how it's being implemented, but how do you determine whether or not those things are working? In other words, if your tactic is a little bit different than Sylvia's tactic, what justifies who's right and who's wrong? Or is either one right or wrong?
I don't think anybody's right.
Everyone has to have their own approach. Like when I did, if I did a group, or if I had a small group with me, and it wasn't the same target as the whole group target, I have the target on a little board, and I don't necessarily have them reflect on it. I take my individual notes as they're working on my sheet for that target. But they'll know what their target is because it's on the little board at the end of the table. But it won't necessarily reflect back to what we were doing that day because maybe it's a review group or maybe it's a more advanced group. So they have their own individual target. And I'll take my notes. They don't necessarily take notes on that when they're working in a small group. You have to do what works for you.
And we didn't want to get into parsing the rating stuff, but it did come up over here, and one of the big questions was, well, you know, like let's say I'm trying something a certain way, I think it's working, but I've gotten feedback to the alternative, that it's not working, or whoever, whatever. It's a good example. And what they, I hope you don't mind sharing that. But then what Lindsay was sharing was that she just turned around and had a conversation, and she said, and that did yield. But it brought up the point, like, you know, she was saying about, like, more informal visits, which is something we've discussed. And it's so funny that you guys brought up because that's something I was telling them, something we've actually been discussing is that more frequent informal feedback as opposed to this more stressful framework of the observation in order to find out. But what evidence are you guys basing on? Like Lindsay said, we thought it was working, and based on student evidence. Not just my gut tells me this is the way I like to do it. But they had solid student evidence to show this, in this particular instance, this approach is working for my students. Here's how I can show that. Does that make sense?
I think that we were actually talking about that and data collection and how it goes in and how we can do that and work on it through the year and get better at it, you
Yep.
know?
Absolutely.
I feel like that's like a main goal. For
That was actually quite a few people's targets today. That was one of the big things. How do I monitor? What evidence am I looking for?
And I'll quickly say, because we're hitting a lot of main bullet points that we're going to talk about throughout this year. So a couple things standing out to me. Data collection and evidence. What's right versus wrong, okay? And confidence. Those are the three, just to make it that simple. We are creatures, everyone in this room, of I want to be right. I want to do it correctly, and I need this is okay, and this is not okay, and this. We have to start letting go of that because it's going to look different from grade level to classroom. It's going to look different. But the more you can talk about and show the evidence pieces of what you're doing is affecting the kids in positive ways, that's what it's all about. And that's where our confidence needs to get built up. Okay, there's so much of that. Am I right? Is it okay? Is it okay? Take a breath. Go back to your own gut instincts with your evidence. Yes, this is working. No, it is not. Get away from the, is it right? Is it correct? Is it working? Does that kind of make sense? And that's, we're having a lot of conversation about that administrative level of how that's the nature we're going to go in. So.
And Mrs. Blair, I just want to say one other thing is, one thing just to put on the table to you all, just to be crystal clear and fair, is one of the things we talked over here too with this table was, or I was talking about with them, is we had a lot of groundwork to make up over the last 3 years. So there has been a high level of compliance mindset, if you will. Like we've got to get this done. This has to be in place. We have to monitor that you're having students reflect, targets posted, blah, 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 blah. We're doing all that now. A lot of that's in place. I don't think there's a person in this room that's, unless you're just starting, that didn't know that you have to have those things in place. So, all right, it's in place. Now, to Jamie's point, is taking that step back of what's working within Daily 5. What's working? What's working in targets and scales?
For you and your students.
Right.
You know, is that broad? It has to be.
As long as it's supported by the evidence. Not to belabor that, but I just wanted to address it because it's something that comes up. Anyway. And we deliberately made an attempt today, even though we handed out the protocol, we deliberately made an attempt, and I knew we were going to get doing that, but try to not hyper-focus on that piece of it. the rating space, and more about what's working as far as the strategy today. But we still want to address it because it came up.
Does anybody else want to share? Frank, or something else?
Anything else? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to-
Yeah,
That's what you made it.
it's not really a question, more or less like suggestions on time management. I know at the sixth grade level, we only have them for 40 minutes, so we don't have the option of starting a little early or running a little over into science, and you only see that group of kids for 40 minutes for the whole day. Like, how do you make all of this work and teach the lesson all within a time constraint? Like, that's where I struggle with time management. Because once the bell rings, they come in, the bell rings, they leave. Like, I don't have that flexibility of, like I said, running over or starting early. So if anybody has any suggestions for that.
You don't have that.
Do you have it pretty tight? For the, you have a, I can statement, I mean, it's the same for everyone, you can have it, or you can have an MBT, whatever it is, you can have the I can, because that is pretty much generic, you have it pretty tight, and then they just have to rate it by learners. Or something like that.
So I have them in their notebooks. I have their journal and then the notebook they do math in. And I'll write, what the goal is, which is usually the standard, and then today we will, and then they write their targets. But then I teach the lesson and I do the independent work, and we do the group work, and then poof, we're out of time, and we got to reflect. That's,
Unfortunately, reflection, and this is just, we haven't talked about it, for those of you who were with us last week with Linda, who I am now,
She's done.
I am
No,
her.
we're
Adopted her. That was one of the things we actually talked about, that the reflection piece is always the hardest thing that falls by the wayside. And this woman's phenomenal, she's 72, and she said, if there's one thing I could have gone back and done more in my teaching career, it would have been to make sure I had time for reflection, but it just was what
and then
it
you
was.
look up
It
at
was
the clock,
one
and
thing
you're
that was
like,
like,
crap.
yeah, it's just one of those things, again, like, it's just simple as, it has to be the timer that goes off, so you know, I you got it. just, like, I stop have 3 for minutes left in the lunch. class, stop, you gotta go.
And that's where you can leverage that daily three piece too. Like if you're doing the I do, we do, you do, and that you do rolls a bit longer than you had anticipated because you're circulating and they need, make that instead of coming with extra, like one of the things that's come up over and over about Daily 5 has been like compliance activities, if you will, because we've got to have all these things going. So within Daily 3, maybe your math by yourself is you're finishing your you do today. We're not having a separate activity today, you're just rolling your you do into the math by myself. And so that's been taken care of, and I'll
Some
see you
people
when you
find
come back.
time to do like exit tickets, and they don't want to post it, and they would post them as they were walking out of the room, but then they came in the next day, and it's like, all right, well, we got to move on to the next lesson, and, thankfully, there's teachers in there, so one
also
also able to
mentioned,
look at the post-its, but.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, she also mentioned like, it's okay if we don't get everything done. Because you say, I have a plan, yes, like I have this plan where I have to do da, and I did all this work to plan everything. It's okay to be like, okay, this took a little longer, like, and I learned that this year. I felt like years before, I had everything that had to get done, like, why am I trying to rush through something? And I'd rather have quality over just trying to comply with, okay, this is my lesson, it has to come tomorrow. I think I learned that a lot by being ICR this year for the first time and having special ed students and seeing just the difference. It's my first year that I had that last year, and I'm like, all right, they kind of also, even though, Diane had them working there, but a lot of times they were together, and it made me realize, like, it's okay to take a step back and slow down to get the quality out of the kids. So maybe, maybe, like you said, having those last 2 minutes, you just stop. And you do it, and then if there is something that has to be carried over the next day, for maybe those beginning 5-10 minutes. But I know we're not okay with that, but like learning.
And maybe first of all, maybe you're like, hey, last year, like I literally was not getting to reflect at all. So I want to try to make a goal that at least twice a week.
Yeah.
We're all in different places in the journey.
I think
When we taught math, we had our exit tickets all printed up, so they just solved the problem, and then they just wrote it out, and it was,
Well, that's what we would put up, like, it was a little mini assessment, put it up on the whiteboard, and then they would solve them on their Post-its, and then they would put them where they thought they were. And then, like I said, with the academic, the rooms where he would either look at the Post-its or I would look at the Post-its, but then the next day, it's like, all right, well, we're starting the next lesson, and, you have all these things that you have to teach.
that was really fast for us though, because you just looked at it and you just saw immediately. I mean, it wasn't like we had to
have trouble finding the time to go back and revisit that skill when you're trying to teach them a new skill. I mean, this is math, you have 10
And that's
chapters you
where I
have
know,
to teach.
and I just felt like.
I mean, I go chapter 2, it's all
Yeah.
operation and fraction, that's why I could spend 4 months on that one chapter, but.
not as much.
Yeah, that's why I was.
Sometimes it's
All right, one last point, and Mrs. King wants to say something, then we have to move on just because our time is slipping away from us. Although these are all really solid points that are all part of it.
Just something to think about. I know when I was teaching, when I did special ed, I found it really hard at the end of the lesson to do a reflection. So my next day would be, my review would be the reflection from the day before. So that's something, because you start off with, okay, here's it's not it's more of an entrance ticket. But like, you know, let's start, what did we learn? Let's break it in groups, let's talk about this. And you would start your day like that. So then it kind of drove your, okay, I need to pull these kids during math with the teacher. You know, I need to review this while this group can move on to the next lesson. So that was something that helped me, because I felt like at the end I did feel like that time was like, oh my gosh, I got 2 minutes left or whatever. And I do, and then now you feel like you're rushing, so I kind of switched gears and made it the beginning. So that's just one thought to think about.
And just one last thing, and I'll turn it back to you guys, but those that have really done well, and to your point, Kelly, about, you know, like that, you're in a situation where the bell's ringing and the students are leaving. So in particular, 4th and 5th, you're still in a crunch, because even if you run over, well, now you're killing yourself on the back end on the other content areas, particularly the science piece. But you guys have it even more difficult because you cannot run over, time's up. So it's that piece about the timer, whoever it was said it, you guys, or Jamie, or whoever it was, I have found that invaluable in terms of forcing. Like if homework's a 5 or 10 minute review, 10 minutes, boom, and you're tracking yourself, so, you know, beep, 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 homework, we are done. I'll look at the rest if I feel it's validated independently, otherwise I'm moving on.
Put a kid in charge of it.
Put a timekeeper, yeah, do something like that, but you're right, especially when you're so bound to the clock, being mindful of it and just setting up those routines is just huge. All right, back to Mrs.
All right.
Mrs. Ashland.
So we have some quotes here. We have some what does work. So from Marzano, it says no amount of further research will provide an airtight model of instruction. And then from Dr. Scott Hogan, we have now it's time to move beyond the why and start working on the how. And then from us, I have a quote that just says you have to start with trying. So a lot of the things that I've just been doing is kind of just keep playing around and seeing what works, what doesn't work. And then Sylvia said student reflection is a necessary piece and it varies. So again, speaking of what we talked about, that we need to have the students reflect, but it's going to look different. So what works? We're going to review the expectation and implementation of targets and scales, and we're going to watch some videos and some examples to what you see and what you hear in them, and to see if there's evidence of your target in action. And then we'll talk about how this can translate into your classroom. All right. So we're going to watch. This is me. So it's going to be a foundations lesson. And then I start with the whole group at the carpet, and then the second part is when they come back and they were reflecting. So this was just like one way I have the kids reflect. I'm going to watch the whole thing or a little bit, but here we go. So this week we are talking about students. Every week. Ready? So this week we are talking about Sylvia said that we have too much technology on that.
Oh, boy.
All right, so that's me, and I start by having the kids. This is an example of foundations lesson. So
You're going to, by the way, really quick, you guys are all going to get this PowerPoint, so you're going to have these videos.
Oh,
You'll be able to click
watch
these, and you're going to
later.
watch to your heart's content, and it'll work on your own computer. She re-recorded.
I feel like I've seen this. Oh, yeah, this has been,
Oh, yeah, you might have seen
this was, yeah, I shared this out to the
That
K
was
team, and I'm
on
sure it got places, it's all good. So, right kind of where I'm standing, there's three like, sets of papers. So on the top part, I have the individual targets, and then right underneath, I have the scale. So in foundations, from September to December, my scale stayed the same, and the targets changed because in the beginning of kindergarten, you're just learning letters and sounds. So, but the target went for each specific week, like the letter. So it said like, I can recognize TVF. I can produce the sounds of TVF. I can write the letters, TVF. So that would change every week when the letters changed, but then the scales underneath were the scales that were appropriate for where that target was falling. So at the beginning, what I have them do is I'll, introduce, like I said, right, this is our target, and they repeat it, and then I really just quickly go through the scale. I say, our target is, I can recognize T, V, and F, but what's our main goal? And the kids will be like, well, I need to recognize all of my letters. Okay, and then we move on. So I keep it really quick. In the beginning, it took a little longer, and I explained, like, I do the ladder approach, like we start at the bottom, and we climb up the ladder in order to go to the goal, and each week we learn a target, and we learn something that's gonna help us reach that goal. So I do that with all three, and then we go through the lesson, and then we did activities at their seat or around the classroom, and then when we come back, I think in the specific video here, I had them turn and talk where they think they were on the scale, and then you'll hear some of them sharing. And in kindergarten, at least they're still honest. Some of them will say, well, I'm a 2 because I don't know all my letters yet. So they know exactly what's happening. Or on a 3 because last week I showed you, I was able to produce the sound of all my letters. So in there, it's a lot of conversation. I just monitor that. And then I had some of them, if they wanted to, and felt comfortable, and I said it like that, if they wanted to share theirs. And I had them say like, oh, I'm a 2 because of this. And they go, and I said, all right, well, how can you get to a 3? And that was another piece, and they're like, well, I need to, and they gave their answer too. So they're very aware, even at that young age. But I feel like for the younger guys, it's a lot of conversation versus that. And we have the time because we're not run by a clock, so if something goes over, we can. But that's what you would see in this video. So we can't really answer.
Don't answer questions. But we're only 40 minutes behind anyway, so.
No, we're gonna get it, don't worry. So then these are some pictures. We could probably see pictures.
We can see pictures.
And again, we want to remember that, it's what works in your classroom. So these are just some examples. That was a big scale. And then this is something that, they had individually at their seat. Can you show what the...
Can you see that? So let me ask you this. Looking at this, and this is just a question I'm asking you all. Where does this fall? Like, is this really reflecting on the scale, or what is this?
No, I think that's reflecting on them.
On
Not
what?
the scale. They're comfortable, how they feel comfortable. Well, they're
On what though? On the scale or what?
well, not the scale.
What are we typically reflecting on what should be the primary focus every day? That's all, thank you. So when you're doing that, like, that whole bit where people were really confused years ago, hopefully aren't still confused, but that bit about like, even with help I'm struggling, with help I can do it independently, I can teach other people. That's almost more like that target reflection. That's like on one skill or standard, this is how I'm doing. Whereas that overall, which the question has come up, well, how often is that overall in ELA versus math or something? But that discussion of that overall, that's the scale. I mean, I think we all know that, but I just wanted to reaffirm that in this particular example of just that general check-in, especially at the younger grades. Like that's something that like Kay and First just talked a lot about. Do we want to try video too? You know what? Actually, do we want to take a quick break? Yeah. We've been going like an hour and a half now. So we'll take a quick break. Bathrooms upstairs at the top, and then we'll come back. How's that? And we've got snacks over there for you, Sam. What is it that you do? That students do, teachers do for this stuff. So just take a look at this, and at your table, what works for you? Just take like 2 minutes at your table and talk about it. Look at this and what's working for you from this. And maybe there's pieces you're missing. Maybe there's pieces you feel really strong on. Just circle back, thinking about your target and where we're at today. What's working for you? Have we assisted in any way yet? Have we moved your target? This is what we had for our best practice points. Hopefully we've hit a couple of your points today so far with some of our discussion. Quick turn talk, 2 minutes. Discuss at your table. How are we moving on our target? Here we go. Who wants to share? Any share? Up. Come on.
Just throw it.
Any shares? Here we go. I'm just going to toss them.
Someone's got to share.
I'm still hoping to get a good patch of lunch this fall, so I'm not. I'm going to toss this way.
We talked about this, like the teacher side are pretty familiar with most of the cases like that, but the student side, like how to get them to understand on the target scale, like making active reflections and things like that. Having more student accountability, how do you like motivate them to actually care about what they're doing?
We addressed that about that celebrating that motivation.
So I just
Toss her away. Toss her away. Oh, hey, look at that. That's our basketball skill kit.
We were right on, but we should be sitting there. Yeah, targets are like everywhere, you go over them, you set goals, everybody knows what your different goals are, but then the student accountability, just getting them to care and be motivated. All right. Let's go. 2 more things?
Toss her away.
We might want to get it out of the way.
She's looking here, apparently. Here we go. Get ready. There you go.
You said this.
I feel like, yes, we're good with the targets and the goals and the scales, but again, with the students, I still feel that when I'm having them turn and talk to each other, a lot of times they're not always, on task exactly what I want them to be doing, or they're not really understanding. They're saying like they're a 3 because their cousin taught them their math fact, so like they're totally not getting that. So just kind of doing that more than I was like trying to check in myself with individual students. I would pull a handful of sticks and check in with them orally, and then that was taking an abundance of time. So I like Sylvia's idea with writing it in the notebook and things. With 2nd grade though, they get so caught up in I don't know how to spell something that they, their reflection comes secondary to I don't know how to spell, and they don't want to get it wrong. So I'm still not positive on what's best for me in my classroom to get that reflection piece and really monitor, did they get what we were doing? So.
Do you want to do one more share?
Okay.
Let's do one more share. They're targeting
There you go, guys. Oh, sorry.
We were kind of saying like what works for us with the tracking their progress. Like 1 year, one of the teachers I work with mine used a Chromebook to track their reflections and their ratings. But then this past year, my co-teacher and I, printed the scales out and had it in the binder, but then making sure they kept the scales. So trying to figure out, what's going to work best and what works best with that group of kids who have that year, because it can change year to year, as we all know. So.
Sure.
We like what you were saying, Scott, to have individual folders or something that can pass it out every day and collects every day, so that they're not.
Don't want to take it out.
Yeah, because they constantly come in. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I thought it was in this and it's laying on the floor somewhere. So in order to keep everybody organized to be able to do that, have it collected every day and passed out.
I was just saying, one person I went in and I saw, and she had a really cool system. She didn't let them take it out of the room. And there was a chart, and at the top, on the side for that unit or whatever long it was, I think for that scale, the targets were already printed on the side of the tracking sheet for kids. And at the top was blanks for dates. And then she had them, let's say it was, and I just used your example of identifying upper and lowercase letters just because it's a simple example, I just mentioned it. that target was on the sheet, the teacher would say, go to that, we're talking about that. And I think this is more for 4th, 5th, 6th, particularly because of the movement. But go to that day, put 9/12 at the top, it was September 12th. How'd you do? And just write it on the chart. So they're keeping their own just quick tracking charts. 2, 3, 4, how did you think you did on that day? You're not checking on that chart every day, but when Sylvia said like every however many 3 days or something you do get back to that kid, you can have them bring their chart. And so if they're telling you that they're at a 3, and you're looking and saying, you've been saying you're at a 3 for the last 3 days, but how can you prove that to me? And they're really showing you too, say, I want you to think back on all these activities we've done. Have you really been at a 3? Because you're saying 3, 3, 3, and you're saying 3 today. Does this make sense? That's just one. You're right. Keep in the folder. Anything else, Mr. Sunshine?
Wait, I have one question to ask.
Up, just answer.
So sorry, I keep bringing up ELA, so sorry for, but, so we have 3 different subjects in our subject, so would you make 3 different sheets that they keep, or how would you do it, you know?
I don't know what that person did. I mean, I think you just have to make it work for you. So whether you want to have a writing, a reading, and then like a grammar / vocab / miscellaneous.
Words.
So it works for you.
Yeah, and I think it falls back to what we were saying.
It goes back.
We're all comfortable on the left, because those are more like concrete things, and now that we're moving, now we're all on this end, but like, I don't think there'll ever be an answer that's gonna completely like satisfy you 100%.
But I was mentioning you and saying how you were saying about that you use the grade book and you don't even keep all these tracking sheets. So I think if you have a self-contained class of students, I think it's easier to just keep. Whereas when you're dealing with 4th, 5th, and 6th, you're dealing with multiple classes coming through, I think you've got to have some other method for student reflection tracking.
Address the kids. That grade book is for Ashley, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's.
Yeah,
That's another whole good point, Jess. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that was just for me.
That's just for
Yeah,
her to
kids
track.
don't,
Right.
yeah.
Yep, good point.
And if the parent questions, you could.
Pull it up.
These are the scores, these are.
My question again is on how the kids don't keep track.
Well, I think that's like how, you know, some of us had like popsicle sticks.
Yeah, and that's what it is.
So like in the kindergarten, we had, some of us like made little pockets, or like the 1, 2, 3, 4. And like when the kids moved up a target or moved up, you know, between those levels, they moved their own popsicle sticks. So that's one way, that is. So like you think you're not doing it, but you are.
She's trying to get out of that.
I already got you some.
Yeah, so like that or the talking, but yeah, you're doing something. Yeah, I think we're just thinking too much. So then when Scott shares these out, if you click here, and I've shared this out before, it's a whole folder of a lot of different examples of targets and scales from classrooms all around.
Yeah, so you can look at that. You guys are all getting this PowerPoint. Some of you have gotten this link before. We've added even more. We are continually adding more and more and more to this. From pictures we take, videos we take, from people that are willing to have videos, into this folder. So you have this slide link. You can go in and look at all these different resources for targets and scales.
Alright, so another thing that's really important is consistency and making sure that we are using a common language, which at this point I feel like we are, since we are doing all of those best practices that are on the left-hand side, but making sure that we're using the words target, goal, standard, understanding the vocabulary that are on the scales, and that just helps you support your next teacher. So each year, now that we've been doing this for a couple of years, the kids should be really familiar with all these words, and as long as you're using them, it's just going to help and support your next colleague. All right, so the big one, so monitoring, let's discuss it. So
We have a handout.
we do have a handout. You can get that handy dandy handout.
Handy dandy handout. Handy. Yeah, there's actually 2 handouts on this. Another one someone shared with me since we met, and so I said, all right, we'll complete that too.
So there's going to be a lot of ideas.
It's the chart handout was our original.
Yeah, for how you can approach monitoring. Yeah, I really like it. I use this one a lot, the one with the chart.
Check out that chart. Where's Mr. Sunshine now?
I have to laugh, I said Mr. Sunshine.
There he is. He's staying here with you guys right now.
So I know we've talked about a couple examples of how people are, or how we are monitoring in our class. And does anyone have an idea that they have been doing in their classroom to monitor that they can share?
I think list of jokes out, or anything you think that you found has worked?
Or what are you doing now, even if it's one thing? Even if you're not sure if it's monitoring, anybody?
Sometimes I have them write on a Post-it, you know, what they did or why they think they are there, and then they stick it right on the scale that they have in the binder. Is that what you mean?
Yep.
I've done that, like at the end of a math lesson, I'll like, you know, say a simple problem and then to monitor like how the student's doing, yeah, write on a post-it, just put it up on the board, and then I kind of watch where everyone is.
We did, like, we had a sheet that we gave them at the beginning when we were introducing a new target or a new standard, and we broke down the entire verbiage and everything of the standard, and then a lot of kids who originally thought they were 3, once we broke down every single thing, we're like, if you're a 3, then you have to be able to do this, 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 this. They were all shocked, and then they were able to say, I'm a 2 because I still can't do such and such. So we tried that for a little bit. Again, we have to get back to the reflecting at the end, but in the beginning, it was a good way to monitor where they actually realized, oh my gosh, I'm not where I think I am yet, which was kind of good.
Huge. Anything else that jumps off of this sheet to you of how we're tracking data? What are evidences you do look at to monitor? So more than how do you monitor, what evidence do you guys look at? What do you consider acceptable evidence of monitoring mastery of a target? Is it just a quiz? Is it just a test? Is it exit tickets? Is it entrance slips? Is it homework? Is homework acceptable?
To me, it's a combination of everything, and also multiple times and over an extended period of time. So
Yep.
something that is introduced in like trimester 1, and it's still graded at the end of the year, you need to make sure that you're still monitoring and tracking those standards.
I'm looking at disparities between like if kids are doing activities in a group or in homework where maybe a parent is assisting, because I never would hold a group example or a homework as a sole example of like primary mastery of a STEM, because Lord knows what kind of interferences there have been.
Well, I'm going to be very honest, and this might make me actually look really bad. But we really...
Thank you for being honest.
We really, when it came time to what their grade was, we looked at their test grade, with math anyway. We, you know, if they got a 2 on their quiz, but then a 3 on the test, we gave them a 3 for their grade. And in reality, the questions on the quiz might have been different than the questions on the test, which, so they weren't...
You didn't feel it was to the point you would want it in terms of like evidence being sound.
So like we
and
really,
making
I mean, we checked their independent work, and we checked like so the big ideas assignments online, and we would look over them and see how they did with them. But as far as when it came time to give them a grade, we went off of what they got on the test. And really, is that the way to do it? Because you're only looking at one assessment.
Nope.
I know, but that's but you're in this whole like
Yeah.
You're gonna meet like kind of like how I do those like kind of little really fast formative assessments that kind of keep scores for.
It can be an
It took
exit
me
ticket,
time
it can
to
be a
get
weekend
into that,
or
but
a
then it was
weekend.
like so fast. I'd be able to collect whatever they did and actually grade it before we even like start. It's like,
I think we have to go back to the old school. Like in the old school, I'd have my classwork, I'd give them an 85, and I'd put it in the grade book. Another classwork 75, I'd put it in the grade book. I don't necessarily do that now. Now you have a classwork, I already got a 3. Let me write page so-and-so, put a 3, page so-and-so, or skill so-and-so, put a 2, and then you have more in there.
And you can
that's
usually-
probably where we were struggling because, I mean, this was the first year, 6th grade.
That's
we
just
grade
as,
grading.
yeah, that's huge.
So, we were only putting, as a department, we decided only to put quizzes and test scores in the grade book. And then
Yep.
you're using that, because I mean, what are you gonna do, go through 65 students' individual papers?
Right.
When it's time to do report cards, it's like, what do you have to look at other than your grade book?
In the first trimester, that's what I was just saying, because I had everything in there. But it was like 60 grades. So
Right.
then when it came to.
And then you're seeing number 2s and 3s and 4s and 1s and 2s, and like, they're just flying around. It's
So
like-
just samples of, just
Yeah.
samples,
And you
not
can't average
everything.
them because
They
it's not an
can't.
average, so it's like, all right, then are you gonna count how many 2s they have and compare it to how many 3s they have, and it's like,
And you can't really go by if they were 2s when you started on that skill.
Right.
You know, you want to look at.
So that's why we have-
Thank you for saying that. Good point.
so that's why we kind of looked at the test, because it was, you know, at the end of the unit or the chapter or whatever, and it's like, well, if they can do it on the test, even though they couldn't do it on the quiz, but now they can do it on the test.
So I'm gonna go back to what Jenna said to me, Jenna, if you don't mind me quoting you from, I think it was last year or the year before. And we were talking about consistently and independently.
Right,
And what does that mean? And I know we're kind of getting a little bit into standards-based grading now, but it just goes to show how everything ties together ultimately, that the grading ties into all this. But anyway, you've made a remark, and there was some big discussion in the curriculum council group about, well, what is that consistently and independently? To your point of, well, what's the evidence of? And you said, I think 5. And someone said, well, why is it 5? She said, I don't, that's just what we decided.
Right.
And so-
We sat in the Nicole and Lorraine and Don and I sat in a room and like, all right, well, what's going to be a 3? And we're like, all right, well, if they get 2 wrong, it was a 3, and if there's 10 questions and they got 1 wrong, it's a 3. And we're like, who the heck are we?
So what's your guys' retort to this? What's your response to this as far as evidence tracking towards mastery of it? Like, when would you consider target mastered at a 3? How much
Well,
evidence?
we kind of did it in kindergarten where, because a lot of the standards say like most or many, and we're like, well, what is most or many? So we decided like 80%, and that's how we kept it.
So you made a consistent decision across the grade level.
We did like 80% or
We did that in
was
second
a 3, 50% or more was a 2, and then below that was just 1.
So a consistent decision was made within a department or a grade level to say 5, to say 80%, to say whatever it is going to be, that these are the minimum number of evidences we need to see to justify issuing a score.
We did that, but we
Yeah.
were like, at the end of the day, like, who are we to make that decision? Like, I don't.
You're the professionals that are in the room.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the bottom line. If you guys are as not unilaterally, but if you as a department or as a team are saying, this is what we feel is reasonable, because to Ashley's point, kindergarten's decision may not work for 6th grade math. It just may not. That's just the way it is. Just developmentally, the level of the skills being taught are just a total other animal.
With math, again, this is, kind of off topic, but we ran into the problem, well, they did the skill, but they made a computation mistake. So it's not that they can't do this skill, right? They just said 3 times 2 is 5 instead of 6. Like, so do you give them a 3 for that skill, even though they made, even though their answer was wrong?
And address that computation as a separate issue. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, absolutely. Anyway, I know we got, but I think this is, I mean, hopefully you guys all feel this is relevant, because it all ties in.
Alright, so these were some examples, again, I don't know if the video's gonna work, but you can watch Sylvia's students reflecting on their work. And I think you said they were using their binders, right?
Yeah, you have to know that I did this on June 12th when we said we were going to do this. So I said, go get your workbooks out and go get everything together and let's put this video together. So Logan went through every step of the way.
So Logan is going to explain how we use the scale
Just listen to
for
it, please.
ABT 5 and how we worked at different levels using our different targets. Go ahead, Logan.
So our target is I can use the distributive program and multiply 2 digits by 2 digits, and that is a level 3. And and our level 2 for our scale MBT 5 is I can multiply a whole number up to 4 digits by 1 digit of whole number, and multiply 2 2-digit numbers. And so here I have 2 problems done. For the 4 digit by 1 digit, I have 3,745 times 4, and for my 2 by 2, I have 72 times 38. So I'm doing the math right now.
All he's going to do is he's going to go through every level on every scale, and he provides an example for everything and how he
proves he's at where he says.
Yeah, and he has his notebook there, and I just had him go back and do it. This wasn't all in one day. I just asked him to explain it, and that's what he did. And the girls, the same thing. I quickly, I know it was a Common Pride Day. I have on a T-shirt, whatnot. I quickly threw some
Which you'll see if you
targets
watch it
up on
on
the
your.
board, and then I asked the girls how to explain how we did it, and she's like, and she calls me she all the time. So you can just see it's an idea. They're not the best videos. But it's how, and then that's how they would reflect during, after the lesson, after the math lesson. But they would only do the one piece. I think Madeline and Meredith is more of the one piece. Logan, I just asked him to explain everything, and he went step by step through every single thing up until level 4.
So we wanted to just share, we wanted to type in and fill here a list for the early grades on one side and then 4 through 6 on the other side about different approaches to having the students reflect and kind of just give us more ideas and share amongst each other that we can put here that we can use. So we want to talk at your table for 1 to 2 minutes about some ideas about how we can get the students to reflect. We've seen Sylvia's binder or the turn and talk. Are there other ways or other ideas we can put on this list?
We're hoping to compile a list that you can reference back to when you look at this PowerPoint.
Because a lot of people
ideas.
do great things and
What are some ways to have kids reflect?
how can you have the students reflect? Yeah, I liked that, because I use that. An idea. Scott had some going in.
We were talking about like even the informal reflections that you do when you do like your daily 3 or daily 5 and you're meeting with the students. Those are important and helpful.
What was you starting off with, Eileen? What was the first thing you said? Informal?
That could go in both columns.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually a vote.
So yeah, that could go in both. Any other ideas? Deb, why don't you share your idea?
I last year made name tags, but I just a little rectangle with the lines, I took the kid's name, and on the top of it, I just had a 1, 2, 3, and 4 in boxes. So they were right on the desks, which was great for kindergarten. So after whatever many of us had a teacher, whatever, I would say, when you go back to your seat, point to where you think you are. So they would just go sit, and I would simply see where their fingers were, and then I might call on somebody and say, thank you for being honest. So why do you think you're a 2? But randomly, I would call them, and they would have to say.
I would argue that strategy could work for all grade levels, to have just
And I
a
was
quick
just
one
saying, you
before.
don't have to have a name.
Nope.
You can just be 1, 2, 3, 4.
It can just be taped on the
And
desk.
this year, actually,
Yeah, you can all desk and
I'm not
All
going to
desk.
put name tags on the tables, so I am just going to laminate cards that have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces right there. And she's also saying that you use, she laminate the paper, you laminate the
Yeah,
paper, and
the 1, 2, 3,
put a paper
4.
clip, and they slide it.
Oh, that's
So they
cool.
are- I won't have my kids use a paper clip, they'll
Yeah.
just point, but it's there and it's
That'll be
quick.
unraveled.
Well, I think it was, to your point about that 1 to 4 point, and to Eileen's point about that informal, like, that not every single thing's going in that grade book, like what Lindsay was saying about, or someone was saying, how Nicole, like 60 points in your grade book. If you have that 1 to 4 taped on your desk
Yeah.
at any grade level, and you're just doing a quick visual, like maybe there isn't a formal exit ticket today for every single, but you're just doing a quick eyeball and you make a mental note. I saw someone in 4th grade last year, and they had a method similar to that. It was cards, but it was the same kind of thing. And the co-teacher just went and made a note of anyone that was below a 3. And they just wrote it down. That's it. Just a quick. Yep. Yeah, a clipboard or whatever. Yeah, whatever.
We had an idea for the older kids. I don't know if this would work, but those folders with the 3 holes, it's like a binder, but it's a folder, giving them a scale, or giving them all of their scales that you will use for the entire year in one of those folders, and then just maybe on the back have that, like you were saying, the date and where you think you are, and then just like a sticky tab for whichever scale they're working on in that day. That way you eliminate the whole, like, you give them the scale, you tell them to put it in their binder, and then they don't actually put it in their binder, and they walk out of the room, they're all over your floor. So if they had them, that would be a lot of copying and a lot of work up front, but then.
And they've got the whole unit
But then they
set.
have it for the whole year, for a whole unit. Yeah.
3rd grade has it, and they have a little photo album.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we have pictures of that in the folder. Tracy shared those out. There are pictures
And
of
holding
that.
70 folders is a lot less cumbersome than holding on to 70 binders.
You got that right.
You know, and if those folders never leave the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nicole, if I gave you my folders, I want them back. Did I give you my blue folders?
Well, but I think material, we count that in, so you might have to.
I think Scott. Scales for advanced then.
Scales?
Okay. And just like.
Yeah, it's all covered.
What I did like,
Anything else?
mine the reflection was like the popsicle sticks as pockets, so that's the same
Oh,
thing as
yeah.
like a game sled.
What's in the pictures? She has like under each scale, she has the, and that really works well for K3, is the popsicle sticks in the pockets where our kids can move their names under the 1, 2, 3, 4 based on that particular scale at that given time. You could maybe, if you only have 2 classes, you can maybe, it's up to you if you like that, but it's in the picture folder. Anything else?
During content, I sometimes do something called one and done. And I'll just call each student back and say, like, we're working on 2x2 division. You do the problem, if you get it correct, you're done. And then you're on to the other activities. Because in 4th grade, sometimes they're really good at pretending they can do something. You really need to see that evidence. And so that way, it literally takes a minute to give that evidence. And then you can truly find those students who either are the 2 level and just need that little extra help, or the 1 level and really are instant with what they need to do. And that way, I don't know, in 4th grade, they're still like, they still love that teacher attention. So it's almost like, the ones that know how to do it, like, they want you to see they know how to do it. They want to show you that. So it's only a minute and it makes them feel confident.
Got that right. I think that's all. And it works for you?
Yeah.
One last thing here. All these different great ideas. You're going to find what works. Like, you guys have had great strategies. Everyone here shared out different ideas that you found work for you. The biggest fail ends up being everyone comes back in September and we've read books and we've attended trainings, we've done this, we've done that. And we start doing these things and then by like November, everything's fallen back to usual. And a lot of times the reason that happens is because we put too much on our shoulders at the beginning. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to integrate technology, I'm going to do Google Classroom, I'm going to DI. And then before you know, it's like, I can't do all this, forget it, I'm just doing what I always do. So you've got to be meaningful about this. Think about your why. Why are you coming in here every day? Obviously we need a paycheck, but besides that, what else? Seriously, like, okay, we have to come in here and get a paycheck, whatever, going to work. So why are you here? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to try to get done? So focus on a few whys and manage everything else. Just my opinion. Unless you're a super teacher, of which there are a few. Just like any career, there's those few people that can just, they just seem to do everything well. They come out and they tell me they're getting 4s on everything. I'm floundering to get to a 3. Okay, that's them. That's not you. Focus on where you are and just focus on maybe 1 or 2 things to start off with. Just 1 or 2. And manage everything else. Yes, we still have to do RTI, and we still have to do standards-based grading, we still have this, advanced math, whatever else you might be tackling that's a personal thing. And like Kelly's doing advanced math this year, maybe that's her. Maybe that's for you, that's what it is. But for Julie, maybe for you, it's daily 5. That's what I'm focused on this year. Really making daily 5 meaningful and making these targets work in daily 5. Sandy, for you, it might be the targets and the scales. I've got to move beyond compliance. So if this is it for you, focus just on this and maybe 1 other thing. Just pick a couple things, classroom management, whatever it is for you. Don't tackle everything. Daily 5, targets, RTI, standards-based. Just pick a couple. Is that fair? Give yourself permission to do that. Don't look for me to say or any other administrator or colleague to say it. Who cares that they got a 4? Or that they're the most innovating teacher in the district? Who cares? Just say it. You know, we have heard it all, heard it all. So forget about that and just worry about you. Just like you tell the kids, don't worry about what they're doing, worry about you. Don't worry about what your colleagues are doing. Worry about you. I hate to say that, but we do that to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. Anyway. Anything else you want to add on the chart?
I want to know more information about using Google Classroom.
Okay.
Like what does that mean specifically?
Oh, you guys said that back here. Did you have a phone with it?
Google Forms, using a phone there. Who said they use the about sections?
I do.
When we put our scales, we do Chromebooks in the other grades. So we put all of our scales in one section, those Google Classrooms, so they're all in one spot. The kids didn't have to search through all the other things we posted in there. And we had it assigned like a copy for each student so they could just do their reading and their self-reflection right in Google Classroom.
Oh, and then you can look at it.
And then the teacher can then pull up like if your student's individual thing.
Okay.
If you don't know how to do that, you can see Maria, Dominic, you can see me, and there's also online resources on the SWSC PD site.
Yeah, Maria.
So any one of us will be able to show you how to do it. It's not too hard.
Thank you for saying that. Anything else you guys want to say or any other points you want to make? We're good? And thanks everyone for sharing these good ideas.
Alright, so we kind of hit on this already. Yeah, evidence and mastery, so there's a couple of questions here, but we kind of talked about that, when you talk about how each different grade level might come up with a way that they think this is showing mastery, or how often you feel the students have to show you. Are there any questions on that? I don't really know what else to add based on what we said before.
Anything anyone else wants to add or thinks needs to be said? We good? Moving on? Can we beat evidence to death? No, we're moving on.
Moving on.
Oh,
Still done. And then that was a big one that we.
Oh, this is a big one. This is a big thing.
Yeah, evidence over each trimester, because that's kind of what we just talked about. So when Deb was saying, well, when you have your grade book, and I have all like the standards in there and then all the activities, she's like, well, when you get to trimester 3, like, are you looking back at trimester 1? And I just stopped and no, because that's so old data.
Like to track evidence.
Yeah, so like to track them and to see where they are. Like I'm not going to look at September's grades or October or November for that same standard that I still have to grade in June. So saying that, you know, the grade book has all the standards and you have to keep, you know, reviewing and going over, spiraling and making sure to have all of that new data.
I'm not going to go down the wormhole of, I will just acknowledge that there are grade levels and within a grade level teachers that view it at the end of the unit, if that standard isn't a priority standard in unit 2, I'm done tracking it. There are others who view it that no, I'm not done tracking it because they earn 2s. It's still going to be in the report card, so I'm not putting not evaluated. I'm going to continue to report on that because they earned a 2 or 1. So I'm going to continue to report on that. If they earned a 3, I just keep reporting 3 or 4. So that's a consistency issue. Standards-based grading continues to be always a discussion consistent. I just want to acknowledge it and put it to bed for right now because we're sidebars. But it's a conversation I've had with Flick and with Dana that needs to continue to be focused on and addressed. Is that what's exactly the expectation in terms of, I know what I think, but I'm not getting into it. And I know you guys have your views. I'm sure about that.
Student motivation to reflect and grow.
Oh, this area is
So we have, what are some things you see working currently? So are there things that you're doing in your classroom to keep your kids motivated? Can you turn and talk for a minute and then we'll share some ideas?
What's working? Other than Mr. Sunshine. What else can you do?
What do you do?
You guys.
All right, so is there anything that you're doing that's working in your classroom? I can give it, like I do sometimes shout outs. Like they'll be in the middle of working and if I'm conferencing with someone and they like try to bowl or something, I'll stop the class and be like drum roll and then say like, so-and-so just read all 65 words. And I know the whole class goes like, woo! And then they get back to work. So something like that, that keeps them motivated at a young age. We also talked here that the young ones are, for the most part, most of them are already motivated. There are some that are not, but they are like really happy to be at school and want to do well and impress you and all that stuff. But they do like the shout outs. They love stickers. That motivates them like crazy, the young ones. Any other ideas?
Can I ask you a question?
Did you guys talk about? Yes.
Can we admit that some days it's hard to motivate?
Yes.
From ourselves. I'm not even talking about kids and like we had some great conversations about
like
all these
what
extrinsic factors that we can't control. Like we just talked about like the stuff that's going on politically, parents, apathy, kids' distraction due to electronic stimuli, all these things. But can we admit that some days we just, it's like, I just don't feel like faking today. But it's like, guys, it's time to learn about blah, 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 blah. Let me give you a sticker versus, yes, tell me you're correct, I'll get a sticker. Thanks. Next. I mean, sometimes it's just tough. And I'm just being honest for me. Some days it's just tough.
Yeah, there's some days that you're every day.
Every day.
That's what we have to admit when they're not motivated and like you've tried things and
You're trying so hard.
right, yeah, we're just
And then like it turns
into a disciplinary discussion. You're like,
it's like
Why can't, like,
This was supposed to be fun.
Right. You're rooting for fellow kids.
But those that are seeing success, what do you think the root of it is? When you are seeing that success of that celebrating, what's behind that? That's my question. Because not everyone's struggling with it. There are pockets that are succeeding. And there's something I see that's a trend across those folks. What do you think it may be? It's something that not a lot of us have the time for because we're trying to rush and do all this stuff.
We talked about in our workshop last week, which we thought was a great idea, tailoring the scales so that like, when you have your level ones or twos, cut off before, because when they see that that's where they're supposed to be, or that's where everybody, their friends are, or wherever, like, they get overwhelmed.
Peer pressure's huge at this point.
They get overwhelmed and they're like, well, I'm never gonna get there, so why bother? So like, kind of tailoring the scales to like either your groups of students or, you know, I mean, obviously it'd be difficult to probably do it for everybody, but, you know, if you can find a way that so it looks attainable to them, so they're not like, you know, just giving up before they start.
But is there anything, I love that. Is there anything else you guys have seen that really you've seen success with in terms of celebrating?
That's hard.
But why are they intrinsically motivated to do anything for you? Some of them are the rats behind that, please. So, any idea? I don't know that I have an answer. I don't, that's why, to me, this isn't a Q&A, it's an O&A, it's an opinion. Because I don't know it's the answer, because there's no scientific evidence to back up my thought. But when we were just talking over here, like, the only because we go back to Candace gave some good examples of things she's done, and they were talking about Dan did something. I actually, when they were talking, I reminded Julia of something she did that really engaged the kids, and you were having a lot of personal conversations with them about those things. Julie had been doing like projects in her classroom, and they were very engaged. Is that opportunity to get to know them, and that they learn about you as a person, and that's tough because we have so much to do, and especially when you have 60-some versus 24 or whatever it is. But them having buy-in to want to learn from you is not easy, but it is huge if you can achieve it, and you know that's not easy to do every day. But if you're taking that time to build relationships and getting to know them, it doesn't solve all the problems. I'm not saying it's a magic bullet, that's why it's an opinion. But you get what I'm saying is that if you take that time and you do establish a little more of that rapport up front and getting to know a little bit more about them. We're busy. I'm not saying go to the soccer games, do this, do that, because I know that's all the theorists say, oh yeah, show up with all this stuff and they're going to love you. If you can, that's great, but you may not have time to do it if you have a family yourself. But if they get to know you a little bit more, like I was saying, Dan, the kids loved last year, he plays that Fortnite. And they just were on that like white on rice. That all just because of him with this Fortnite. And that's just something they engaged with. I didn't even know what it was. I just saw it recently and I was not know what I was expecting. So that's just something I've seen more for people is getting that more buy-in from the kids. And I know it's not an easy thing to do.
And then we just talked about, like you said, making sure that we do celebrate growth, and like you were like Lindsay was saying with the rubrics, like even if it's that little growth, any step in the right direction, trying to make the students aware of that and make them feel good about that. And we didn't bring our Chromebook, so. Skip. All right, so are there any questions that you think still need to be addressed, whether we can talk about them now or something that, you know, we can pass on to JD and Dana?
Think about your personal target and if you had your questions.
Yeah, did we meet some of your needs up there? Yes, no?
Why don't we take a moment at our tables to just assess how do we think and maybe if you need to go back there and revisit your
chart and
what is that? SN, that's summer's not over, or team tip the scales, or Parker.
It's still.
Yeah. Let's everybody know. The food is trumping everything else.
I'm hungry.
Here we are, and we just had an anonymous idea passed on to Mr. Sunshine. which was that one person's takeaway today was an idea for a traffic chart, which I know it's a bit of a different concept, but was the same thing you guys. So hopefully if you have something you're taking away here today, one idea at least, but that was one that we just heard, Mr. Sunshine just heard tonight. So what else? Did you guys want
Any questions? Yeah, anything else? that
what other
still
unanswered things are still?
Lurking.
This wasn't a magic bullet today, but it's you know, and it's an attempt to just stand and do this all day long and you're going to be good. I'm going to introduce, this is what I'm doing at all of our get-togethers.
I saw it.
We'll pass it down one. That's right. Anyone else have a share that they thought was a key takeaway? Or a target that you feel still needs to be addressed? Or I know there's definitely still things that everyone's at a different level. But any other key takeaways today?
We were saying that we feel like we're at the point now where we need to like digest all this information and like sit and really, picture it in our classroom. How would this work? How would that work? And really understand how it works.
We can also talk about how, like, we know that it's going to be difficult at first, but that difficult and a lot of work at first in June, it's going to be awesome. They're going to see like all the results from that, the time.
Right. My first year, I was having to go out to breakfast, and the kids still were doing what they were doing. We just had a routine.
I heard that 5 times today now. That taking the time at the start of the year to establish routines, whatever that is, daily 5, daily 3, targets, whatever it is your focus areas are, really tearing the crap out of those routines. But I mean, in kindergarten, we're preaching to the choir because they have no choice. They come there knowing nothing. But I'm telling you, by the time they get to 4th, 5th, 6th, they ought to know this by now. They've been told for years, blah, blah, blah. I don't have time for it. And I'm telling you, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to regret it. You're going to fight all year long. Because once the honeymoon wears off and the reality strikes, here I really am. I know I was faking it for you the first few weeks. Nice, this is really hanging. Then Mr. Sunshine goes away and, we don't have that anymore. So keep it going. Keep it going. Make yourself happy. You're right, Joanne. Anybody else? For teacher? Comment. I love the comment all stars.
You just, 10 minutes late. You just realize like what worked last year probably won't work this year, and you just gotta refine it and it's okay.
Thank you for saying that. That's a huge thing that you hear from special ed is this constant need to.
I remember when I first started, my aunt would be like, "Oh, you just write your lesson plans for 1 year, you get to use them year and year," and I laughed in her face. I said, "Not a special ed." I know. Well, I'm here now, or 1 day when I go to work.
But I feel like that, like co-teaching this year, gave me a lot of, different insight or different mindsets. Yeah. All right, well, let me end it.
Oh,
Yay!
I just want to say one last thing. I just want to say one last thing. First of all, I want to thank Sylvia and Ashley and Tim for all from folks that you are doing. But I also want to just remind you of something that I'm serious what I said to you earlier. I looked at the signs, and some of you are signed up for Thursday taxonomy. Don't overwhelm yourself. I'm going to tell you, don't overwhelm yourself. If this is where you are, and you're focused on monitoring a target and tracking evidence. Now, some of you, as we all walked around, I've seen, I'm good with that. I feel comfortable. I've got tracking processes. No problem then. Go to taxonomy, knock yourself out. But if you're not there, I'm not saying don't go to Thursday. But what I'm saying is, if you go Thursday, go with just, if I take one thing away, but I'm not driving myself crazy over this. I'm not going to go out of this and feel defeated, like, oh my God, I can't do scales. NDI, I went to Linda Foe, she was great, now I'm trying to do that, and I'm trying to do that. You're going to get overwhelmed again. Don't do it. Focus on 1 or 2 things. Give yourself permission to do that. It's not easy. That's all I wanted to really.